Hi, I'm Christina Gordon. I'm the CEO of the Women's Foundation of Boston, and I am thrilled to be moderating today. This is a fascinating and inspiring webinar titled, Can I Wear My Nose Ring to the Interview? We are so excited to have Ellen Gordon Reeves with us. Just to let you know a little bit about Ellen, she is the author of Can I Wear My Nose Ring to the Interview? A crash course in finding, landing, and keeping your first real job. Which was featured on many networks, ABC, NBC, CNN, Fox, Extra, NPR, Katie Couric, Forbes, MSNBC. She was chosen as Michelle, or the book was chosen as Michelle Singlatory's Color of Money Book of the Month. She was noted by the Washington Post. Can I Wear My Nose Ring has been featured in publications including Essence, Parade, the Boston Globe, U.S. News and World Report, the Atlantic Monthly, Chicago Tribune, and even the UK Guardian. So Reeves is the creator of Extreme Professional Makeover Self-Presentation Boot Camps, offered across the country, including NYU, Northeastern, and even Harvard Women's in Business Annual Conference. She taught at NYU. She served for 20 years, I think, on the faculty of Columbia's School of Journalism. She has been a career columnist and a blogger, and she is the former executive editor at the New Press, a nonprofit publisher in the public interest. And now she consults to individuals and institutions, helping them define their goals and find often overlooked but easily available resources to achieve them. For those of you who are new to our organization, the Women's Foundation of Boston economically empowers Greater Boston women and girls. We do that through funding and creating high impact leadership and economic programs in partnerships with nonprofits solely serving women and girls. The Women's Foundation of Boston was founded in 2017 to fill the gap of the massive underinvestment in women and girls nationally as well as locally. Discovering that only 1.6% of all US philanthropic giving is directed towards women and girls serving nonprofits, and believe it or not, 40% of that is sent overseas, the founders were motivated to address this shocking philanthropic void. As businesswomen, the Women's Foundation of Boston founders apply their investment and strategic lens to create and manage their organization as well as their granting. Our exclusive focus on economic empowerment is very intentional because one, when a woman's economic status improves, all of her life variables go up as well as for her children. Two, women reinvest about 90% of their incomes back into their families and communities, which creates a multiplier effect. And three, as businesswomen, we are highly competent at evaluating the economic viability of projects and programs. We have committed close to $3 million by the end of this year in grants to women and girls serving nonprofits since inception. We have impacted over 9,000 women and girls in Greater Boston by empowering them to become financially independent agents of their own lives. Our all-volunteer organization with one employee now continues to help us expand. We have become the go-to organization for women and girls issues in Greater Boston, and we are proud to fill that important role as it was a gaping hole that desperately needed to be addressed. And now, on to a more exciting topic of finding, landing, and keeping your first real job. And now I'm going to turn it over to Ellen.
Thanks so much, Christina. And I should say it's not necessarily just your first real job, any job. And of course, one of the main ways to achieve economic empowerment is to have a job. And to have a job that you want. So, but first, let me really say a bunch of thank yous first to Christina for the introduction and the opportunity, to Michelle and Noah and Nicole, someone I didn't meet, who really set this up and did all the behind the scenes work and are doing it right now. And to my friend, Debbie Kaufman-Goldfein, who introduced me to the Women's Foundation. And I want to say, Women's Foundation of Boston, one of the first thing I did, I hadn't heard of it. And so I looked it up, I Googled it, and I looked it up. I looked at their website. And I think it's important to do both. This is already a strategy because You want to see, when you're doing the kind of extensive research that I'll recommend, you want to see not only what the organization or company says about itself, but what others say about it. And then I did something I recommend that all my clients or students do. I looked at the board list, I looked at the advisory list, I looked at the staff list, I looked at everything to see the human impulse. Who do I know? And I was unsurprised to see, oh, well, there was Katie Lemire, who Debbie introduced me to, or there's Will York, and there's Geraldine Acuna Sunshine. These are people that I know from other organizations. And it gave me the feeling of, oh, okay, yes, this is something that I should get involved with. And the more that I find out about it, the more impressed I am. I want to say a special thanks to my friend Kathy Jager, who joined today when I posted on social media. Some years ago, Kathy was, and this addresses one of the questions that came up in some of the questions submitted in advance. 3 out of many of the questions were about ageism in the workplace. And Kathy was older, was unemployed, looking for a job. And through me posting on social media that I need someone who's willing to have an extreme professional makeover, Kathy volunteered, introduced through a college classmate, volunteered to let us come with a CBS camera crew into her home. We had never met. And I said, do not clean yourself up. Okay, no, don't dress up. You can't clean your house up. And she let us come, and we did an extreme professional makeover. Within months, she had a new job at a higher salary. The video, if you want to see this transformation, is on my website. We'll post that information at the end. She's also a seasoned HR professional and is now part of our network and community. So thank you, Kathy. And it just shows the power of reaching out and connecting and what can happen. And we've been friends ever since. So one of the things that now maybe, Michelle, if we can just have the agenda slide. So I'm not going to use a lot of slides. I used to use PowerPoint sparingly, but someone in another organization told me PowerPoint is for people who have neither power nor points. Mostly this is just a tech nightmare for me, but Michelle taught me how to convert to Google Slides, and I learn something new every time I do one of these things. So I want to just quickly tell you what I'm aiming to do today. I'll talk a little bit about my philosophy and some strategies. I'll do an interactive exercise using the chat box to see that if anybody here has a specific step in mind, and maybe Sherry will also help with that. We'll talk about as many of the questions submitted in advance as I can answer. And again, if not, if you contact me and you're on the webinar, then I'm happy to answer them in writing or to set up a time to chat. And then we'll have some live Q&A before we end. So, okay, so we can, let's see, we don't have to look at that. But in terms of philosophy, I really want to say, first, I believe that you really can write your own ticket if you know how to reach out, how to connect, and to understand what kind of resources, as Christina said in the introduction, when I said, well, what is it that I try to do? I try to show people resources that are right under their nose that they haven't thought about. And so, because I think we take for granted things that are too close to us. So what I find is that, and these are the statistics, I'm not really a numbers person. I was a French and American history and literature major in college, which people told me would be good for nothing, except then I taught history and literature of France and America in France and America. And I became a book editor, a French fiction education editor. I mean, you name it. I'm the guy from my college class who said, what are you going to do with that? You should be something like an economics major. And in fact, never having been an economics major, I then became the economics editor also at the New Press. So yeah, sorry, Dave. Okay, so context a little bit. I don't want to forget, although sometimes it feels in some places, certainly not India, that things are opening up. COVID has devastated the world and upended our lives, social orders, everything, laid bare a lot of ugly facts in the world that have been more repressed in some places. But the reality for the job seeker is, or if you're looking for a volunteer opportunity, is that there's never been a time with more opportunity. There is more need than ever. More need for money, more need for volunteers, positions being created, the ability to work from home. So instead of thinking, this is it, the world is shut down, nobody's hiring, in fact, you should be thinking this is a time, sadly, of great opportunity for those who know how to use it. And the way to know how to use it is to reach out and connect. 80% statistically of all jobs are filled by personal referral. And 80%, although I know not the same 80%, I'm not a statistician, but the stats people have told me, you cannot conflate these two statistics just because it's 80-80, but 80% of all jobs are never advertised. They exist in what we call the hidden job market. So if you don't tap into real people, you may lose opportunity. And again, not a job not being advertised is even something to think about. No, you can create your own job or position. I think except for the teaching jobs that I've had, none of the jobs I've had have existed before I made them. I perceived a need, and then I offered myself often as a volunteer, and then it became a job. But I tell my clients in the school programs that I work with, oddly, mostly with quantitative analysts, quants. I never had heard that term before I started working with them, again, through a college friend who saw the title of my book. Can I wear my nose ring to the interview? His students needed help with interviews. They were mostly non-native English speakers. But I tell the quants, look, if 80% of jobs exist in the hidden job market and people connect by personal referral, why do you spend most of your time hurtling your resumes into the black void of cyberspace? It doesn't feel good. And you may hear nothing. You may have just complete silence from that universe, which is depressing. Or you'll be contacted by recruiters who have nothing, they do not have your best interest at heart. They have a commission at heart. And they just are looking at keywords. The other day I had a client who actually is a CEO type, and he was recruited for a position that was a chief of staff. And I said, now why are they reaching out to him for that kind of position? We looked at his resume. Right out of college, he had been chief of staff, as maybe even as a volunteer, I don't know, for a congressperson in New Jersey. And so that's why, because LinkedIn pulled the keyword and they contacted him, and that's not what he's interested in. I still said, use the opportunity, connect to the recruiter, tell the recruiter what you're really interested in, but let's look at those keywords again. Anyway, my point is that I would like you to spend 100% of your time on 80% of the opportunity, not 20% of the opportunity. So yes, some of you may have gotten jobs or opportunities by sending your resume blindly, but that's not what I recommend. I find also, and because I believe that everybody should have the opportunity to do something that they want and they love, somebody has to do that. Why not you? And if you are one of the people who tuned in today, you know to look beyond yourselves and to try to connect to communities and to have other opinions other than your own. And so that's a good sign. And I meant to say thank you to those of you who did show up today, besides those of you who registered and aren't here, but we hope that you'll watch from home another time. So most people, I think, get jobs because they can get them, not because they want them. And I would like people to have jobs because they want them, or volunteer opportunities. When I say job, I mean whatever it is that you want to do next. And so you have to write the resume for the job you want, not for the jobs you've had. And so I think I should also back up and say, a lot of the advice that I give may be counter to what you have been advised or to what you even may be advising other people. But I've always questioned the conventions of job hunting because a lot of them don't make sense to me. And so I'll just offer my take on why I think some of these conventions are misplaced. I interrogate them, I'll put out my opinion, take it or leave it. But as I learned when I was teaching in Cambridge, actually at Buckingham and Brown and Nichols School, I had two wonderful older mentors. And one of the teachers said, Anne Freeman, she said, when you have a disagreement, you can't just say what you really might want to say to the parent or the kid, but really you have to say, you know what, Johnny's behavior isn't working for him. Not, oh, okay, when he bites all the kids in the class, this is something that we don't talk. His behavior isn't working for him. So if your job hunting or reaching out behavior isn't working for you, I urge you to try some of these new strategies and thought processes. So a few tips before we get to the exercise, because I want to make sure that I cover 3 of the strategies that I said I would cover in the invitation. One is again about references. So there are a lot of conventions that say, I've seen resumes that say professional experience or relevant experience. Now, in my world, resume real estate is really, really valuable. So I don't want to see a line like professional experience. Why would you put unprofessional experience on a resume? Why would you put irrelevant experience on a resume? Okay. So one of the most underutilized things you could have in a resume is the header. That header should say what it is you're looking for. And I always use the fake example of what if you want to be a goldfish groomer and someone is looking for a goldfish groomer. Now I say that we don't really groom goldfish, but again, when I was in college, never forget her name, Amy Corning stuck her hand in my goldfish bowl and tried to pat my fish and then it died. So I think that's why I use the example of goldfish grooming. Okay, so if someone gets 100 resumes and 99 of them say professional experience or relevant experience when they're looking for a goldfish groomer, but your resume has a header that says goldfish grooming and related experience, which resume am I picking out of the pile? And you may not have had goldfish grooming experience, but maybe you worked in a pet store. Maybe you worked in a hair salon. So if you tell me, here's how my experience can benefit you, the employer, and you make it easy for me to choose your resume, that's something that already sets you apart. But what will really help is if you look at social media or you talk to people and you connect to people who know me so that by the time I see your resume, someone has already given you a personal recommendation. You should talk to my friend, you should talk to whoever it is. We know that that's really one of the main ways that people connect. So, so I do want to try this exercise to see if we can help each other. Now, when I was in my teens and I was having my first of many existential crises, and I guess it's not a surprise that I did a thesis on Jean-Paul Sartre in college. And then I found out what he was really like, and I regretted it. But in any case, existential crisis, I go to my mom and I say, why are we here? What is the point? And she said, we're here to help other people. And I really believe that. So even in this community today, I'd like to see if we can help each other. And I'd like to see if I can do a quick sort of makeover in how you present yourself and what you're looking for so that you can help yourself. Because as I always say, God may help those who help themselves, but people help people who help them help them. Try saying that 6 times fast. Okay, so what I'd like you to do is to put into the chat the next, if you know, and you don't have to participate, but if there's something you're looking for, if there's an organization you'd like to connect to, if there's something that you, an organization, a company, a thing you want to do, would you be willing to put it in the chat? And then let's look at it and see if someone in this community of today, 31 people and maybe more looking at it later, whether somebody can help connect. And we're not under an obligation, but maybe we'll be able to help. So let's take a minute. And if you have something, a company, an organization, volunteer, anything that you're willing to put in, that would be great. Give people a minute to think about. Okay, now let me look. I'm not seeing. I knew someone would say that. I knew someone would say Melinda Gates. I thought, don't say the Gates or someone like that, but okay, we can work on it. But look, okay, first I'm starting to see communications, community relations, public relations, guidance count. I'm looking, okay, let me take one. Here's one very specific one. There are two Sarahs. Okay, and I'll go back to some of these. I'm looking for a guidance counselor or therapist for students of color. This is very specific, except for one thing. Sarah, we don't know where you're located. Sarah Herman. Sarah, could you say okay, so in New Bedford and in Massachusetts. So may I ask, is there anyone on the call who knows either someone who does this or someone who could connect Sarah Herman to someone who would know. Can anyone put in the chat? Is Madeline, when you put Loveland Foundation, is that what you want to connect to, or is that the resource? Don't know. Now, okay, so this is some of the confusion of the chat, but in any case, one of the things that I'll ask you to do is, if you think, now Women's Foundation of Boston has at least 20 organizations. Christine, is that right? Oh, she's muted, sorry. But I think there are, I don't even know how many organizations they have their hands in, but many. And so I think that we should, oh, there you go.
Yeah,
Madeline.
we currently have 20 grantee partners.
Grantee partners. Okay. So first of all, this is a huge network. I asked how many people what the ripple effect was, and the organizations run from small to, say, Girl Scouts, which is 26,000. I think, Patty, you told me. So we have a huge thing. So Madeline, thank you. So Sarah, we just see that, I don't know if Sarah and Madeline know each other. I'm guessing they don't, but even if, and this speaks to so many of the points that I would have tried to make. Madeline says, here's the foundation, and I'm not even sure where it's located, but it doesn't matter where it's located. So that if Sarah reaches out and finds out that they're located in Kansas, it doesn't matter, because people in Kansas know people in Boston, or people in Kansas know people in Wisconsin who might know someone back in Boston. What has happened with technology is that geography doesn't matter anymore. And in fact, reaching out to someone who's not in your location takes the pressure off, because then they say, oh, we're not trying to use our resources to help you. We're just connecting you to someone who has the resources. So that, for example, at Baruch College in a master's program, when I had a student who all he wanted to do was work for the Yankees, and not a good thing to say on a Boston call, a predominantly Boston call. And I just have to say, I have a nephew, when he was little in Boston, once he was really young, and he was, I thought he was swearing at me. And I said, Daniel, what did you say? And he looked at me and he said the worst thing that probably a 6-year-old boy in Boston could say. And he said, I lived in New York at the time, Auntie E, you cheer for the Yankees. And I thought, that is so weird, because my sister and brother-in-law were not even necessarily fans. Anyway, whatever. This is, we learn what we live, or not. So, but the Yankees. So I connected this guy who wanted to work for the Yankees to a student of mine who was in California, and California or West Coast, no, from a West Coast program. He knew someone on a West Coast team. They were happy to connect. And again, no pressure on the West Coast one, because the guy wasn't looking for a job on the West Coast. So this is my point. Anyway, thank you for all of you for showing what we can do when we ask. Now, I want to say the next part was going to be this. And Sarah was very, very specific. And that's really another thing that I want, I hope you will take away from today's webinar, is that, and that was one of my questions, please don't say, I'll do anything. What are you looking for? I'll do anything. Okay, now I can't help you. If someone puts in the chat box, if I say, what are you looking for? And they say, I'll do anything, none of us can help you, really. I mean, we could tell you, look at Craig's, let's look at this. But if you're as specific as Sarah was, you will get an answer. So the first thing, okay, Sherry, you actually direct messaged me instead of the whole group. But the first thing Sherry said, so I'll use you as an example, I don't know you, but first she said, I'm looking for a job. But in the second message to me, she said, I'm looking for a role in communications, community relations, public relations. I prefer nonprofit or government employers. Well, good for you for connecting today, because again, Women's Foundation of Boston is involved in at least 20 nonprofits. And so if anybody here knows an opportunity, you're welcome to share it. But Sherry, here's another thing I would do. I would look at, this is how I would approach it if you were my client or my student. I'd say, okay, so you're going to focus your search, because things are too amorphous. There's too much to focus on. You have to focus on, I say the rule of 3. 1, 2, 3, you can handle about 3 things at a time. Now I will contradict myself and Sherry say you have to look at 20 things. But I would look at the Women's Foundation website. I would look at which 20 organizations they are connected to. I would then look to see what jobs are actually open in those organizations in the roles that you're seeking. And if you find one, I would connect back and say, oh, look, how did I hear about you? I heard about you from one of your partners, the Women's Foundation of Boston. This is something that will help you get closer, and we might even be able to connect you to an individual. But now people know. So I think I don't even need to do the second part of the exercise, which was to ask you to be more specific. The more you help people help you, the more they can help you. So I was saying in a practice call, I remember when I was in elementary school, and the head of the school said, we were just in the auditorium, I remember, and she said, everybody think of a dog. I guess I will just do this just to drive the point home. So I'm going to say, think of a dog. Would everybody put in the chat box, put the dog you're thinking about right now, quick, just two minutes, less than 2 minutes. Put in the chat, dog, dog, dog. What dog are you thinking of? There we go. Okay. You see my point. We think we're talking about the same thing, but we're not. And the more specific we can be, look at all the encoding, right? Names of dogs, my mom's golden retriever, Freddie and Debbie. I knew you were going to say Freddie. I am not necessarily a dog person. I love Debbie's dogs. Let's be clear. We have a very special relationship. She talks about her dogs as if sometimes I think she is talking about her children. Anyway, look at this list. So, but if I'm looking to get a dog, and I don't care what dog, that's fine. But if I want to get a golden retriever, I'm going to talk to Molly Richter. Okay, she has a golden retriever. I just found out that golden retrievers, there can be white golden retrievers. Why are they called golden retrievers? Okay, so anyway, here we are. You've gotten my message about being specific, how we can connect and help each other as communities. And okay, I can take her mom's dog. Great. I do want to say one thing. If the person who asked about how can I get into user experience, my backup, if nobody said anything, which sometimes happens because I've taught in the first day of school, you try to talk to the class, silence, silence, silence. So we know that, even on Zoom. But the person who asked about user experience, I do want to note that if you're on or if you're watching, the Women's Foundation of Boston next webinar in June will be focused on women in technology, and that's a place you can go to think about this. We could talk more about that later. Okay, so a couple of other strategies before we move into some of the specific questions that came up. We talked a little bit about resumes and writing the resume for the job you want. I believe in aggregate or modular resumes where you just put everything in, have it for yourself, and then you tailor, you pick and choose from that resume to create the resume you need for a specific job. You should never have one resume. You should have resumes tailored to every single job. Everything counts. I've had people say to me, well, I didn't put that. Well, why didn't you put it? It's volunteer experience. Oh my gosh, you should see, if you look at my video and you see Kathy Yeager, you should see my reaction when it turns out she had a lot of, I can't remember, Kathy, maybe political or organizing experience. And I said, what? Why isn't that on your resume? And she said, well, that was a long time ago. I don't care. All I care about as an employer is what can you do for me? If you've had the experience, I know you can do that. That's how we prove what you can do for the employer. Because the successful job search is the intersection of two searches, yours for the right opportunity to use your unique talents and skills, and the employers for the right person. If you're the person who can do that for them, then you're golden. So, and this is another way to think about interviews. Some of you asked about calming nerves. We'll talk about that. But having the confidence to understand that that you are helping an organization or an employer if you're the right person. You have to have that confidence walking in, but you have to be prepared. You have to know what they're looking for. You have to have tailored everything to that. You have to reach out in advance. Resumes. Okay, so we talk about that. Oh, references. If you have a line, if you're wasting valuable real estate resume with a line that says references are available upon request, please don't use a line for that. When are your references not available upon request, right? You killed someone and so you can't get a reference? No, your references are always available upon request. Another tip or strategy out of the blue before we turn to the submitted questions and keep moving along. I don't know why, but people save their references, their cheerleaders, their known cheerleaders for the end of their job search. At the end of a search, they turn to they pull together a list of references and say, will you be willing to speak on my behalf? Why wouldn't you reach out to those people at the beginning of your search? They are your team. They are the core of your network or your community. So first, I would go to those people and say, I'm looking for a job or opportunity. I'd love to be able to call on you. I'd love to know, but I've done the work to try to identify a couple of things that I want to do. Here's a list of 3 companies or 3 organizations. Do you know anyone you could connect me to? And would you be willing to look at my resume and give me some insider information? You know, before you testify to my abilities, engage the person in the search. Okay, so this is really important. References, random thought. I was saying to Michelle the other day, so someone once, a young person put the name of a doctor on the reference sheet. And I said, I don't see anywhere on your resume that you worked in a physician's office. And he said, oh, no, I never did. That's my family doctor. He's known me inside and out since I was 3 years old. And I thought, no, that is not someone who can serve as a reference for you unless you worked there. But use your references and use a bonus tip on how to get more money. Everybody seems to want to get more money. So this is the bonus strategy tip to using your references. If you approach and coach your references correctly, and there is a chapter in my nose ring book about this, which is really used for all ages. If you coach them correctly, your references will ask the employer, well, I know what I love about Michelle, but what do you value about her as a candidate? And they'll tell me, well, what's great about her is this. And then I go back and I tell Michelle. And then when it comes time to negotiate for salary, she can say, well, one of the things I know is that I'm the only person who knows every kind of, beyond this is the smallest part of her abilities, but the tech skills. And so that is why I think this argues for the higher end of the salary scale. Or when if I receive a job offer and someone says, I want to make a distinction between the terms of the offer and the offer of employment. And so you react quickly to say, oh, I'm so excited that you hired me. I know you had other candidates. What stood out about me? Well, Ellen, you're the only candidate who spoke French. Now, when we get to negotiating the terms of the offer, then I say, well, I know that French is a skill you really need. I hope that argues for the higher end of the salary scale. Okay. So now we've talked about, these are all the tips and strategies. One thing when I, again, in the prep call, and this is how we learn from all experiences, including volunteer experiences. So those have to be on your resume. I asked Christina and the group, well, is there something that bothers you as you've been interviewing, because you interview all day long? Christina and everybody are interviewing volunteers. And Christina said, can you talk about Zoom? Because we are on Zoom now. And when people have personal backgrounds, and some of us do here, I made sure it was neutral today. But she said, I find that very distracting. And I think that's important to note. You can, as she said, people can put up a sheet. Go if you have to go in the bathroom and, just have a private area. I've liked sometimes seeing insights into people's personal lives. But on the other hand, this is the point, really. The word Christina used is the key. It's distracting. And that goes for everything that I want to talk about in terms of what is professional and what does that mean? For me, what it means is no distractions. I want to focus on your capabilities and what you can do for me as the employer. Okay. So, but Zoom, another thing about the backgrounds, I'm not a fan of the virtual backgrounds only because they cut your hair and head off and they can be weird. The other thing is people, I think, don't exercise good judgment. Look at, I know Christina, I said, I'm going to say that, but look what happens. Sometimes she gets the pointy white. Look at that. Okay. So that's okay. It's part of the thing, but check it out before you do it. And what I love is when people put up weird backgrounds that I don't understand, like someone put one in space. And I thought, does this mean you're a space case? Or the ones where people put up beaches. And I'm thinking, you're already on vacation while you're applying for my job, or you don't need this job, or here you are with the view of the Golden Gate Bridge. And I'm thinking, if I had a view like that, what else do you need? But very seriously, think about that. And the biggest insight I got this week from a client, who said, and this is now moving into some of the questions that were submitted in advance. And one of you said, how do I calm interview nerves? And my client said, when I get nervous, I start talking really fast. I observed him and I could see that he was doing this. He was looking not at me at all when he talked about a job that he was fired from. And so it was so obvious, his body language spoke to this, but he said, well, one thing though that I love about Zoom is that I can see myself on screen and I can self-correct. I said, oh my gosh, I've never even thought about that. I don't love seeing myself on camera. I can't look at the green light. I feel like I'm at the eye doctor's office, and I have really light retinas. And so I just can't look at the light, but I can try to look straight ahead. Anyway, this is the thing. Zoom gives you the opportunity to self-correct. You can even tape yourself set up a Zoom call with yourself, with a friend, tape yourself and see what your speech tics are. So that if you're doing, I've had students, I'll do it now. So I go to meet with a student and I say, John, this is the student doing it, not me. John, could you please, your pen tapping, it's very distracting. And he looks me in the eye and he says, I'm not tapping my pen. Really? Unaware. We don't know what our tics are. Zoom or having someone observe you can help you understand whether you are saying like all the time, which I do it myself, but I think it makes you sound less intelligent than I will presume you are. People have different nervous tics. People are looking not straight ahead. So observe these things. Okay. So couple of topics. Sorry, here, move closer. Here's a strategy, even on Zoom. If you are this way, kind of at a distance, and it comes to an important part in the interview, don't forget to use the camera to engage your listener. So you've been talking. When you really want to make a point, you can lean in just the way you would in an interview and say, and here's one of my trick questions. I used to do this when I interviewed other people. What really pissed you off about your last boss? Now, when I did that, I was testing the candidate very deliberately because I had established a friendly rapport. And then I used body language to lean in and say, come on, just tell me. Now, if the candidate went out of turn and said, oh my God, just total nightmare. I'd stay late all the time, blah, 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 then I know, okay, great. And I would smile and say, okay, thanks so much. And I'm thinking, I can't hire you because this is a test of diplomacy. I'm really trying to find out what you'll say about me if I'm your boss. But if the candidate leans in and understands this is still a situation, the power dynamic is that I'm still the interviewer. And if the candidate instead says, I had a boss who was very challenging, but I learned a lot from the rigor imposed in our workplace. And we had to stay late all the time. And yes, it meant that I missed my class or I wasn't home with my family for dinner, but that was what the job required. And it was tough, but that's how it was. But now I'm looking for an opportunity where I can be in a different situation and still have challenges, but in a different way or something. One of you asked, what do you say? Why do you say you're leaving a job? Nothing is negative when you're job or opportunity hunting. Everything is positive. One job was good, but this opportunity is better. Okay, no negativity. So, okay.
So Ellen, it's 1:45.
Yeah.
And I don't know if we should open up to Q&A. I'm happy to get that going, or do you want to still share? Because it would be great, but it's up to you.
Right. Well, I see that people are putting in the chat questions that were some of the submitted questions. So that's fine. So, okay. So
we could just have people put in the chat questions that they would love to get answered from you live. They could type it in the chat box, but I think they also have the raise their hand feature. Yeah. I'm not sure you can see everybody's little box. So
no, I can't right now. So
yeah, so the chat box, please type in any questions you have for Ellen directly, and hopefully she'll try and get to some. I do see that there is one about how to tell a candidate that middle school, and it probably applies to high school girls and males probably too. We don't wear belly shorts and
right, because they're distracting, right? So, and not because we don't celebrate bodies or because it's unprofessional. So again, one category of question that was asked was about what does professional mean and how does that fit into today's context of What does professional? That's a racially coded and loaded word. Does professional mean white, male dominated mores? So, but as you see, how do I combat this and how do I factor this into the conversation? I believe that by connecting as human beings, this is what we each can do to know each other and to connect and to offer, in fact, opportunities to people who have been historically and systemically excluded from the workplace, people of color, women of color, and that we need to do what we can to reach out individually and do what we can, but to understand what we mean when we say professional. So for example, I got 3 questions about tattoos, okay? Now, if you're a tattoo artist, tattoos are professional. This is your portfolio. You are wearing your portfolio the way an art student would carry a portfolio. In certain workplaces, and in my experience, often hospitals, healthcare settings, and hospitality and food service, some places say, we can't take you if you have tattoos or visible piercings. So often I do tell clients, if you want that job, if you want to work in that environment, then you have to cover them up, okay? But how do you be an individual? There were questions about self-expression and what if it's not professional according to the definition that we have to interrogate. You have to understand the context and you have to connect so that by the time someone meets you, you've connected with people, they're not thinking about your nose ring or your this or that. But the point is, again, you want people focusing on your talents and capabilities for what you can do for the employer. That's what I mean by professional, is your ability to do the job that is required of you and more. So Sarah, that's what I would say. I think you have to tell them, this is distracting to some people. If that's how you want to get your job, with a cleavage exposure, okay, that's a different job you're looking for. And you can get hired that way, but that's not what I advocate. Okay. And someone is saying, should I wear my nose ring to the interview? I take that. The title of my book came because my students asked me this real question, and what they were asking from the Radcliffe and Columbia publishing course, where I've taught for 20 years, where this book came from, was a real question. What they were asking was, will I be accepted? So the question is this: yes, to thine own self be true, but there are consequences. And so to one of the other questions where someone asked, how do we mentor young people and how do we help them understand these conventions? I like to teach the political dimensions of self-presentation. If we are applying to somewhere we want to be accepted, the reason you feel nervous, to answer the anxiety question, why do you feel nervous? You feel nervous because you're being judged and you could be rejected. If you are of the mindset that you're there as much to judge them, is this the right employer or organization for me to spend my time and talents on, as much as they're judging me? And if you've done your homework, if you have prepared assiduously, if you have Googled everyone, prepared lists of questions, done all of this stuff, then this is what builds the confidence to calm your nerves. But you have to really do a huge amount of work. Now, someone said to overcome ageism when applying for a job, my sense is certain questions are there to confirm your age. 3 of the questions were involved in that. I'm sorry that Kathy left because she was dealing with the ageism question. Age is, I always say it's a matter, mind over matter. If you don't mind, it doesn't matter. I talk out of both sides of my mouth. To the young people on the call, I want to say, here's the reality, the thing in your favor. You could be a cheap hire. Don't tell your mom I said you're cheap. But for older people, you bring experience and maturity. Not that the young people don't, but you have many more years to have demonstrated what you can do, even in another setting. And so what you can do to overcome ageism is one, and here's a political dimension. Okay, you can try to make yourself look younger if that's one thing you want to do. Not everybody wants to dye their hair. Not everybody wants to do certain things, but and that's up to you. But what you need to do is to convey the confidence, the enthusiasm, and the energy of youth. That is what you can control, okay? Because that's what someone's looking for. What are people worried about? But I had a candidate at one point who said something to me I remember it was a talk at a public library, and she said, I have a visual thing, and it's a disability. I don't know whether I should talk about it, and I'm going to need accommodation. And I said, well, okay, are you legally blind? What kind of accommodation will you need? And she said, I would need a bigger light at my desk. She was not applying for things because she was convinced she had this massive disability. And she had a slight disability, but it wasn't something that wasn't addressable. So I got a couple of questions that I want to talk about how do I apply, should I apply for things that are a higher level, or how do I do that? It says 3 years experience. Let me just say one, I think, yes, I have a couple of minutes to say, remember that when you're seeing job postings, this is the employer's ideal. Here's what they want: a PhD level of expertise with 20 years experience, no matter what they say, who's an expert in the field, who they can hire for minimum wage. Okay, that's what the employer might be looking for. I exaggerate, but you get my point. They want the best possible candidate at the lowest possible price. And your job as the candidate is to show that you can do this job. And here's why: because you've had similar experience, because you're a quick learner, you learned this language, or you've studied music, which means you're familiar with another symbol system. Okay, that's a skill in the workplace. And so these are all things. Your job is to show the employer what you can do for him and her and make the connections. That's why you're using headers on the resume. That's why you're directing the employer's attention to what you can do for him using what I call anecdata. Anecdotes that you've rehearsed, okay, with data, so you're showing measurable deliverables. There's no employer or organization that isn't interested in either making money or saving money. And if you can show how you can do that for him or her, then again, you're golden. But rehearsal is one of the keys. So I always think about the writer E.M. Forster, who said, how can I know what I think till I see what I say? How can I know what I think till I see what I say? That's why we rehearse. The first time you answer a question, someone asked, how do I answer the question, what is your weakness? Now, for that person, I don't remember your name, so I can't put you on the spot by name, but I left the questions as they were we didn't even put them up. But in fact, one of your weaknesses I perceive as an employer is that you don't use spell check, or you use it, but you're not overriding it, because it said, what is your, something about, it wasn't spelled right. In any case, so strength and weakness. A weakness could be, for a young person, something like, I regret that I haven't had 10 years of full-time experience, but here's the experience that I have had. You point to the positives all the time. If you're not a native English speaker, I speak English, I can understand everything, but I always am thinking that I wish I could be a native speaker and speak at that level, that kind of thing. Okay. Let me see if I've answered. Oh, and so ageism. Sherry, I hope maybe I can connect you to Kathy, because she dealt successfully with that. Let's see, we have another minute or two. I'm just going to look at what else I might say about some of the questions that were submitted in advance. Frequent interview fails. Again, not doing your homework. When someone came in to interview me at the New Press, and their question to me was, what kind of books do you publish? I'm thinking, are you kidding me? You didn't look up what we do? Or, oh, this is a book publisher? I thought you were the New Press, the magazine publisher. You don't even know where you're interviewing? Do your homework. Use the web, Google, talk to everyone you know, put out a call on LinkedIn or social media. Does anyone know anyone at any branch of this company or organization I could talk to get the insider lingo before, before I go there, right? Because this will give you the kind of insight that you need to connect. Here's the other thing. As the poet Emily Dickinson says, tell all the truth, but tell it slant, success in circuit lies. So we asked someone who was interviewing at the New Press, why do you want this job? Now the answer is because I want to work in nonprofit publishing. I love the authors you published, Lisa Delpit, Howard Zinn, you've published Michelle Alexander, you've published Studs Terkel. One of them said, I need health insurance for myself and my family while I finish writing my novel. That's true, but that wasn't why we were going to hire her. Okay, so you do need that kind of insurance. I'm going to say one more thing before we start to wrap up and see if there are any more questions, but I wanted to say one more strategy about using your resume in information or exploratory interviews. Often reaching out and connecting to people can be awkward and you're not sure what to say. But if you write to them and you connect and you say, I'm interested in this, and I'm taking the liberty, that's a phrase I use all the time, I'm taking the liberty of sharing my resume in hopes that you might be able to give it a quick review when we talk. What does this do? 3 things. 1, it provides an agenda for the meeting, which could otherwise be awkward. 2, it gives you insider information about your resume. Oh, well, we call this, we like to use this term, or blah, 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 or maybe you could frame it this way. So someone expert is looking and giving you insider review of your resume. And the 3rd thing is that he or she is focused on your unique talents and capabilities. And every time I have a client do this, within a week or a few weeks or a month, the person gets to know, oh, I found this job and I thought of you. Why? Because you have focused them on your talents and capabilities. So these are a couple of strategies that I hope will help you rethink how you connect. But really the lesson is we have to reach out. We have to reach out and connect and try to help each other. So, okay.
Well, Ellen, we're running out of time. Thank you so much for taking this time out of your busy day and with all the prep and practice that we did. We really appreciate joining us and sharing your words of wisdom. We really are so appreciative. And so thank you all for everyone who's attending as well. And before you go, please take a moment to complete our event survey. It will only take about a minute. And I think the link is going to be in the chat because that helps us guide and craft our women's and girls empowerment webinars just for you. So thank you for that. And please stay tuned for our next webinar, which is in June. And that is titled A Day in the Life of Women in Tech. So that will be really exciting. So again, thank you, Ellen, and thank you all for joining us.
Thanks very much. And you're welcome to, I know my other email is in the chat too. Either one is fine, but please do connect. I, of course, couldn't answer every question and couldn't get through all the material, but I'm really happy to meet everyone. I hope you will connect with each other, and thanks so much.